Okay, looking good. So let's get started. Hi, my name is Asif. I am presenting a topic on a weekly basis to a audience in LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook regarding the topics of AI machine learning. You will hear many buzzwords. You will hear many publications that are discussing, medias are discussing about AI machine learning, and you either hear the word AI way too often, and you never almost hear machine learning. So if you hear machine learning, that means you're actually paying attention to how this AI actually works. And if you have some interest in the machine learning, we can go deeper into the machine learning for you. Um, okay. That's a test by the fire department. In case you can hear, there's a test outside. So let's get back into AI machine learning. If you hear about machine learning, that means you are seeing machine learning and the implication of machine learning, right? And you understand sort of the core of what AI is, right? AI is not really what we would like to call AI today. It's not there yet. Artificial intelligence is slowly working up to that point. So this is a very first mile of artificial intelligence, the one that is actual artificial intelligence, in my opinion. But if you're looking at machine learning, you're seeing a huge possibility that is impacting multiple industries, and impacting them very fast and exponentially. Right? We saw an incremental growth for last 70 some years on AI machine learning, but since some of the releases of Chat GPT or some of the other capabilities like Tesla's, you are seeing machine learning adaptation in a much faster rate. So every week we discuss a topic that is, industry specific, right? Last week we did one on education. Prior to that, we did one on prop tech, which is the real estate investment and investment into prop tech, property technology that will have implications from AI machine learning capabilities, right? Anywhere you can think of data existence, there's a possibility of machine learning's existence, and there's not a single place on earth that doesn't have data. If you have enough interest, you will make enough data available, and you will make machine learning as part of your process in exploring those data to give you better insights, early detection, recommendation, all sorts of automation that you can think of. So the machine learning does not stop with Chat GPT. Machine learning does not stop with a specific AI that is in the media and cycle over and over, right? With that, I would like to make an introduction of myself. My name is Asif Haider. I am a decision science strategic advisor at COOP VA. COOP VA stands for Continuity of Operations Planning, which is a military term. I'm a military veteran myself. And what I've learned through continuity of operations planning while I was in military is that you never go out on a mission or you never do a business without COOP. You have to have a coup in order to address the fact that you will run into a risk management decision sooner or later. You will run into a risk, you will run into a threat, you will run into a vulnerability that will jeopardize your mission, that will hinder your mission, that will provide a stoppage to your mission. And in order to have that mindset where you are able to address those risks and threats and vulnerabilities, is to make a list of possible risk and threats and vulnerabilities, because you might not have 100% of those threats and risk identified. However, you will be able to address that in a smoother and swift fashion by training for those kind of vulnerabilities. So the difference is, do you stop your business operation for 6 hours or 6 months? Do you stop your operations for 6 days or 6 years, right? There's a difference between how you approach your risk and how you do your operations planning with the vulnerability assessed into it. So our VA stands for vulnerability assessment, continuity of operations planning and vulnerability assessment. And the current day vulnerabilities that we have is the manual task within organizational business process or workflow, right? There's so many manual tasks. And if I have to dive deep into the manual task, the very deep end of it is to say, we've been clicking on mouse for so long. How is that a vulnerability? Right? If you have to go to a website, if you have to conduct any activities on your laptop, you have to utilize a mouse for that. You have to click on a mouse to get to a website, or to click on the radio button to select a product. Whatever the cases are, you have all these clicks that are vulnerabilities, right? And I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I want you to think about that, because that adds to that workflow, that adds to that business process, right? But if you come up in a higher level and say, okay, Asif, mouse clicking is a problem maybe 5 years down the road, but what about today? Today you have manual process like documentation. And the documentation, it creates such a time-consuming part of your project, time-consuming part of your day-to-day business, time-consuming part of your, let's say, overall success of your business. As in, how much revenue were you able to bring in because you spent less time on documentation and more time actually facing the customer and increasing your customer satisfaction, right? Name of this podcast, excuse me, name of this, I also do a podcast. I do a weekly podcast as well, but a weekly webinar that we are addressing today as far as industry, there is no industry, right? Usually what I have is industry specific guest that will come and join me on this topic. So, when I'm talking about education, I will have somebody from education world. I'll have somebody from the cybersecurity world when I talk about cybersecurity. But the document AI, the document weekly webinar topics that I'm presenting today, really, it's all industry. Every single industry has documentation process behind it. And every industry comes to it from a different perspective, as in not all documentations are done the same way. Some documentations have to be highly automated, and even with highly automated documentation, you still have a manual process behind it, as in somebody has to carry that automated documentation process. And there are industries that you can definitely say has not left the paper mills yet, right? That they're still printing papers and they're still writing things down, and they still have the need for that manual task to happen. So the documentation AI, if I was to speak from a specific industry, I can go from Hollywood all the way to the Amish house in Pennsylvania, right? Because everybody has a documentation process. And the documentation process of it, not necessarily is that you replace all the papers, not necessarily you get rid of all your PDFs. It's that you automate it and scale it over time, so that way you have less time consuming documentation, right? Because documentation is a key ingredient on an IT infrastructure, along with any infrastructural workflow that is required for an industry, right? Documentation helps you with your audit. Documentation helps you with your record management. Documentation helps you with your customer satisfaction. So first mile to the last mile of all industry journeys, there are some documentation process behind it. So the reason we don't have a guest today is because I would like to engage on this topic and actually find some interested party in LinkedIn who's able to come in and join me in this discussion, so that way we are able to discuss this topic specifically about documentation AI. I do not foresee this document AI solutions to come in line and replace all the documentation anytime soon. But the process has begun. Process has begun a while back. It's just that now with ChatGPT like capability and the introduction of ChatGPT in a mass market will grow the potentials for document AI exponentially, right? And this is the first day of the conversation, let's call it that. If you haven't heard of document AI yet, I will highly encourage that you do look into it and you try to understand some of the complexity that there is in document AI. And you are only reducing that complexity in order to reduce time. And document AI is very simple, in my opinion. Once you look at it for long enough, you'll see it's not really that energy consuming. It's time consuming, but the energy comes from the fact that you are looking at this document AI and finally you have a solution on how to reduce your interaction with those documents. Because if this documents become a live document that is AI based or machine learning based, you are able to interact with these documents in an energetic way, right? Just like you are so excited about ChatGPT, think about all the documents that are interacting with you in a way that you don't have to read the full document. You can get a synopsis. You can get a summarization of a document. You are able to find meaningful cases out of those documents, no matter how many pages there is, right? We as a human, we would like to be very creative. And one of the ways to be creative for us to have not go through a mundane or redundant process of reading through documents after documents that doesn't energize us. Rather, it takes energy away from us, right? Um, with that, I'm going to pause and I'm going to see if I have any questions live on LinkedIn, because we would like to have this conversation happen in real time. We want to see, what sort of questions are being asked, and how do we address that? Because as I do this weekly webinar, one thing I realize more and more is that I learn more from these webinars than I did prior to starting this webinar, right? Because through questions is where I realize some of the answers that I don't know the answer to. However, I do have some answers sometimes, which is at least close to the real answer, right? And that's just the way I approach it, because I don't know all the answers. I don't have all the correct answers, but I may be able to address some of the concerns with an answer, at least close to the ballpark, right? So let me define document AI before I move on to the benefits of document AI, right? If you are looking at document AI, think about it as a document understanding, right? But that's just the one aspect of it, right? Document understanding is what you are trying to accomplish at the end of the day for mass amount of users, right? If you're looking at document understanding, you will appreciate document AI, machine learning that goes behind the document and turns that content you provide using text, right? All the alphabets, all the sentences, all the words that are in a document, and convert that into a context. As in, content of a document is turned into a context, and that context is very time consuming. That was my laptop. um, the content of the document that you are trying to understand, in your human brain, you take that content in and you put context behind it, right? And to do that piece of reading a content and understanding that content using context in your brain is the process that machine learning goes through as well. Machine learning will have to have a way of reading that content and contextualize it using previously given information in order to make sense of that content, right? So document understanding is a fascinating topic because it mimics the human capabilities, just like all the other AI machine learning tools, but it gets really close to human understanding because you are utilizing your vision senses to take in information and then turn that into context, right? So if you read a document for document understanding, would you rather read the full document, or would you summarize the context and say, some of the information is just something that I don't have time to read, right? So let's say, for example, in an invoice, if you're looking at an invoice, you are most likely are not interested in all the details, especially the way the invoice was filled out. Some of the invoices will have redundant information. So you can, in a split second, look over that redundant information and get to the core information that you need. And that to you is less than 5 seconds or less than a minute, right? Because you're reviewing an invoice and trying to understand what that invoice is. But if you do hundreds and thousands of invoice a day, or however many invoices you do in a year, you can imagine that time that you are saving, right? So invoice and documents, let's not forget the link here, right? Because they're all written content that is able to convert into a binary, which is zeros and ones. And just like a human brain, a machine will be able to say, I looked at this invoice and look, out of all the invoices that you have read since 2019, I'm just picking up a random year here. So for last 4 years, all the documents that me and you, as in you as a person and the machine learning, right, is able to read those documents for the last 4 years. You taught a machine learning how to read those documents and say, this is how this important piece of it comes up, right? As in, invoice payout is very important. Invoice that are being paid out to who is very important. Invoice of why it's being paid out is very important. And then the machine learning is able to learn all this steps with you as you are providing that system a capability to learn that information and take decisions on on that content, right? So as you can see, it evolves, right? So you don't give it up to a machine on day one for that invoice, but what it does over time, it reduces your dependency on reading that invoice over and over in order to understand that invoice, in order to pay that invoice out, in order to take an action on that invoice, right? So I think it energizes me a lot to think about how many human hours will we save by not reading an invoice. That machine can say, look, I've read through majority of the invoice and I came to conclusion that yes, this invoice has been filled out properly and has been filled out by the right person. I've been able to authenticate it by some sort of process that I go through, and here's the number, and here's why you are paying, let's say, $2.50 to this contractor, right? And that $2.50, you're able to do that yourself if you don't want a machine to do it, right? But still, there's a need for the machine to pay off that $2.50 with your command. Let's say, for example, you utilize that click of a mouse to say, $2.50 to this John Doe independent contractor. It's fine. Go ahead and pay that. And once you do that, that's the only involvement you have. And that is the beauty of document AI, is that we are thinking about document AI from such a high level. But if you look at that one piece of just doing invoice and the documentation, you're able to appreciate the fact that you will save lots of time and you will have more energy to do other things than just to focus on this redundant, repeatable, and sometimes we call it a dangerous process. Let's say, for example, instead of $2.50, you paid somebody $2.5 million or $2,500, well, whatever the difference is, right? You want to be able to protect yourself from those scenarios. So I'm speaking on. I'm still continuing discussion, the discussion about document AI, and I just went through the invoice as an example, right? As you can see, the title of this conversation is Microsoft 365 Copilot, right? Wow, what an amazing future that followed ChatGPT. When people saw OpenAI's ChatGPT, they quickly learned that OpenAI's ChatGPT is based on Microsoft's funding. Microsoft provided OpenAI with tons of credits in order to train their large language models inside of Microsoft Azure, and Microsoft was able to utilize this ChatGPT-like feature for their MS365 suites of product, right? And that was not something that is not linked to the release of ChatGPT, because it was coming, it was on the process, and it happened. And when it happened, specifically for me, I was super thrilled. Like, I was talking to people that day when I saw it on the YouTube video. Within 6 hours, it amassed so many viewing from so many interested parties, because it's an amazing feature to have when you are discussing the fact that you use PowerPoint, you use Excel, you use Microsoft Word document, and of course, you'll use all sorts of MS products on your daily day-to-day task, right? Could be Power BI, could be that you're automating something within your workflow using MS product, right? MS AI, Microsoft AI that comes with Microsoft 365, right? The cloud. So you have lots of engagement with Microsoft. So Microsoft to provide you with this new feature where you are able to write a prompt on your Microsoft Word document and have that prompt turn into a full document based on your personalized, tailored needs, right? As in Asif's to say, I would like to write a letter of recommendation to myself for I don't know, a position. I just have to think about that off the top of my head. But if I was to do that, how would I do that? Right? I can go to Google, I can type that in and go scroll through multiple links and say, after 50 click, I was able to copy and paste a recommendation on my Microsoft Word document from Google. That's one step Google, 50 clicks after that. 50 is too much actually, but let's just say 50 click is what we are not counting all the time, but let's say 50 click is enough. And copy and paste that into my Microsoft Word document. So even if that took 1 minute to do, even if it took 10 minutes to just find that right format or template from Google website, excuse me, not Google website, but like from Google search, you're able to find that website and then copy and paste it to Microsoft Word. However long it took, I would rather have the prompt on Microsoft Word to say, I just typed in what it is that I'm trying to write. Tell me a template that needs to happen with my name, with the information I'm providing you, and personalize and tailor it to my needs, right? So, what do I mean by personalized and tailored as to my need, right? It's tailored to your need as in the question that you're asking, right? If you're asking the question to say, write me a template on this topic, right? And write it with my information in it. A chat GPT like system does not know who I am, does not know the fact that I have a name, I have a last name, I have an address, and I have a telephone number that would like to be on the top of the letterhead. Microsoft Word is able to retrieve those information that ChatGPT doesn't have from my OneDrive, from my calendar, from my inbox, right? Wherever it is that I authorize Microsoft to learn in this information and put that information on top of a letterhead. By the way, if you were to do that manually, it would take you some typing, it will take some clicking, it will take some, thought process of how to format that single address bar, right? And then you write the rest of the document and it's still tailorized based on your OneDrive information, as in the information that is coming from your calendar, information that is coming from your OneDrive hard drive, and you have informations that are coming in from your inbox, right? So you have multiple levels of information that is personalizing your letter that you have to write, and that letter might not be accurate, but my point is, I have saved at minimum 1 minute by not going to Google, few minutes by not, reformatting templates that I found online, right? So that's few minutes, right? And we don't write a recommendation on a daily basis, but we do write email continuously. So I want you to think about that document AI, not just from the fact that you have a Microsoft Word document that you have to write, but you also have to write an email. And that email writing capability, I think, is where the biggest pain point lies with many of the users. Anybody who's listening and you're not pained by the emailing process on your daily basis, I recommend that you keep that pain away. I recommend that you never go through that. I recommend that the fact is you are living a good life. Stay in that life, because when it comes to writing an email on a daily basis, and first email is great, third email is fine, but if you write 10, 15 emails a day, that's 10, 15 minutes of your life that you will never get back. And that's 10, 15 minutes is being very generous, right? Because there's so much thought process that we have to put in order to write these emails. So that's MS365. Um, let's check something here. Let's see if there's any notification. All right. Okay. So again, document AI. It's a topic that will be discussed because Google, Microsoft, Amazon, everybody's working towards resolving document AI. So first mile and the last mile of this document AI journey, wherever it is that you start, whatever the pain point it is that you're starting with, you always can find a use case with document AI, right? A lot of the industries and organizations I've engaged with, they have a need to get to a point in the future, right? But some organizations are not very patient with their vision, right? The vision is to say, I would like to have a system that is able to do all the shiny, cool things that I've been hearing from and fictional movies and books, right? I would like to have that today. Well, you can have all the AI technologies you like, but what if you did have that AI technology that did all this cool stuff, but it didn't know how to read and write? It didn't know how to take your command prompt. It didn't know how to communicate with you using the language of your preference, right? So you would have to understand that the fact is, no matter what AI system you develop, how cool it is, it will always have to have read and write capability. It will always have to have the capability not just to speak to you in the language that you prefer, but the ability to say, I came to a decision based on the things that I've identified and things that I've labeled incorrectly or correctly, and this is how I got to the decision. That requires read and writing. That requires document like AI processing. And that's why when I say industry wide, no matter what AI you develop, no matter what industry you're in, you will need an explainable AI, which we can discuss down the road in a weekly webinar. But for today's purposes, to document AI, if if you were to look at the vision you have for your organization as far as what it is that you would like to accomplish in the next 5 years with your new AI project that you will either adopt from outside or you will build one from the scratch for yourself, no matter what that AI vision you have, you must relax and sit down and talk about document AI, because that's a read and write. That's the content that will have context behind it, and the context is so important to have because um, system systems that are generated outside can read content very easily and can create context very easily. What you as an organization will need to understand is that once you adopt that outside process, your content is very specific to your business process. And if you don't have a system that can understand the content of your business process, understanding the way you need to understand it, the way it has to execute your content for you, it consumes times. Once you have already adopted a chat gpt like system from outside, it takes time to bring in your context into that chat gpt like system from outside, right? So the merging takes time. And before you go out and buy a chat gpt like system, you would want to consider these implications of, am I ready to adopt an AI from outside? Am I ready to train my contents to a context reader, right? What sort of data pipelines do I have? Do I have the data structures that these systems will require? So you have lots of questions to answer. And if you're interested, feel free to reach out to me. I am always providing a high level understanding of AI machine learning to everybody. So everybody has a level set understanding of what AI machine learning is. This is for most non-technical person, right? If you have no interest in technology, you would at least want to understand how to communicate your need of AI machine learning to somebody who will develop this AI machine learning tools for you. So even if you have these mindset that you're not a techie, you wouldn't want to know how to talk tech. Well, if you are able to put the requirements together for somebody to hear you out and then say this is possible, you would want to communicate those requirements to whoever it is that's listening properly. And that's what I do. I set up the high level understanding of AI machine learning so you're able to discuss this requirement without really losing sight on the focus of what it is that you're trying to accomplish, right? And this requirement gathering, this ability to communicate the requirements to the parties involved, it's super important because it saves you time in designing, it saves you time in development, and you get a shiny product at the end of the deployment that you are able to actually utilize and be happy with, instead of going back and forth with changing the versions and trying to improve the deployed product's capability in providing you with feedbacks. So if you have any questions on Document AI, if you would like to join me in Document AI conversations in coming in coming Wednesdays at 11 p.m. Central Standard Time, if you would like to come and discuss this topic live on webinar with me, please feel free to share this with anybody. Please tag somebody who you think might be able to discuss these topics with me, or just ask questions. If you're an interested party, just want to ask questions on a weekly webinar, feel free to engage me. And then I'll set up a time where we will discuss document AI with very much specific needs and understanding. Thank you. Thank you all.